Welcome to Remix EQ Live, where we're amplifying equity with a mix of information, interviews, and inspiration. I'm your host, Dr. Erica Tate, and today I'm live here from Savannah, Georgia, where I live. So, for those who are joining us today, please drop in your greeting of choice in the comments. Let us know who you are, where you are joining us from, and the equity work that you are doing or aspiring to do. And remember, Remix EQ Live is an experience that is meant to be shared with others. So I encourage you to hit your share button and invite your people, your tribe, your network to join us and participate in our conversation today. While those comments are coming in, I am so excited and ready to introduce you to our two guests, Alicia Johnson and Andraya Mimms. But before they introduce themselves and tell you about all the great things that they're doing, I wanted to share a little bit about how I know these fantastic women. And I do this at the start of the show for two reasons. One is I love to provide context for how we are connected, how our lives intersect professionally and personally. And two, it reminds all of us that we already have people in our network who can inspire us today. So I met Andraya socially in my early days in Savannah, Georgia. We immediately hit it off, talking about everything under the sun, and have done so for over 10 years with a mix of weddings, birthday parties, births, and graduations. And now we're on a live stream show together. So we can keep talking about our passions for family and community as it relates to equity. And Alicia and I have run into each other professionally for some time because of our previous work with health and community. Recently, I had the chance to connect with her a bit more often because we were both involved with the Racial Equity and Leadership Task Force, real Savannah. And Alicia convened the Economic Empowerment and Wealth Development Committee. I led the authorship of the education report. And because where our committees fell alphabetically, we got to sit beside each other when we were presenting our findings. So we got to have a little bit of chit chat and I get to know a little bit about her. And now that the world is opening back up, slowly and safely, we get to connect at more events, which is how I like it. So I'm excited. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Alicia to kick off this remix by introducing herself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alicia Johnson. I am the executive director at Step Up Savannah. Here at Step Up Savannah, we focus on economic inclusion. And economic inclusion is about supporting the economic mobility and self sufficiency of all community members and creating opportunities for wealth building and asset building for all. We are excited that Erica invited us so that more people can learn about the work of Step Up Savannah and all the great things that are happening as we work to not only coalition build, but capacity build in our community, particularly for low wealth communities of color.
Thank you. And Andrea, please introduce yourself.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I think I had a delay there. My name is Andraya Mimms. I am an attorney. I've been a practicing attorney since technically 1994 when I was first sworn in into the public defender's office in Rockdale County, Conyers, Georgia, as a third year practicing act law student. So anyway, I now moved to Savannah in 1995. And let's see, I attended Spelman College. Shout out. Georgia State University College of Law in the heart of urban Atlanta. And I am now here. Since I have been practicing since 94, 95, my practice areas cover criminal defense, bankruptcy law, family law, juvenile court law, some personal injury law, real estate law. I, somewhere in there, also got a passion for mediation. And so I am a registered mediator, I'm a registered arbitrator, And within the mediation category, I also wear I've got several different individualized registrations as well. So I am able to mediate cases involving kids in terms of custody and support. I am registered and trained to mediate cases that involve domestic violence, trained and registered to mediate cases that involve juvenile delinquency, truancy, dependency issues, which may kind of cross over with foster care as well. So I do quite a few things, and I'm just happy to be here today. Yay!
Well,
Thank you for having me.
no, thank you. Thank you. Yes. Yeah, that's how I was. I'm like, yes. Hello, Amarachi. Thank you for joining us. We're excited for you to be here with us today. And that's how we feel. We're like, yes, we're going to have a great conversation today focused on advocacy. So for those who have just joined us, this is Remix EQ Live, where we amplify equity through a mix of information, interviews, and inspiration. And after those wonderful introductions, I know that you are sharing and inviting others to tune in and interact with us. This show really offers us an opportunity to connect and build community around the equity work that's being performed throughout the world. We're lucky today because both of my guests are here in Savannah, Georgia. So we have a little local flair and lens to add to the conversation. But the way we do it on this show is that we center the work. That means our guests share examples of what they do in their role or position as a way to illustrate how they are working to advance equity in the spaces in which they work or live. So we're going to get into it. We're going to start back with Alicia. So in your role as Executive Director of Step Up Savannah, how do you advocate to uplift women and families out of poverty?
So we have a variety of ways that we do that. Of course, one of those ways is about direct service programming. As you and I have had many conversations about, you can't program your way out of poverty. Poverty is institutionalized, and so is the marginalization and disenfranchisement of many of those who are experiencing poverty at that level. And poverty is not just the absence of material wealth, it's also the absence of access, influence, opportunity, education, and justice. And so one of the things that Step Up does is we look to not only center and elevate and amplify those voices, right, who need bridging capital the most, but we also advocate for systematic solutions across the community through policy actions, whether that's at the local or at the national level, and we work to provide those. Because equity recognizes that each person has different circumstances and seeks to allocate the exact resources and opportunities needed to reach an equal outcome, which is a whole lot different than equality, right? And we know in this work that access doesn't always equal opportunity. So the other way that Step Up looks to lift those is to create coalitions, capacity building, create bridging capital in the community, expand programs that are working, looking across the national landscape to look at programs and services that are working in other areas, looking to find funding and coalitions here that we can bring those best practices back into the community. So we have hundreds of partners here in the Savannah area, but also statewide and nationally that are working toward racial and economic justice. And those are just a few ways. We enroll in public benefits. We have workforce development. We have an AmeriCorps Vista program. We have, Neighborhood Leadership Academy, where we teach people how to advocate for themselves from self to system. So we have a variety of ways.
Oh, that's great. First, thank you for bringing up the difference between equality and equity. And I love the partnership, the coalition approach to the work that you're doing. I feel like you and Step Up are an example of how this work doesn't happen in a silo, that we really need to make those connections across communities, across states, as you're doing with your advocacy. I just wanted to ask a follow-up question. Could you share what you mean by bridging capital so people have an example or two when thinking
Yeah.
about that term?
So again, as I mentioned, we know that access doesn't always equal opportunity, and that the work of equity is about having the exact resources and opportunity needed to reach an equal outcome. Often we find, again, in impoverished communities or those who have been disenfranchised or marginalized. Remember, I also said that they have the scarcity of influence, information, education, justice.
Mhm.
Um, an example of that is I could have a program, an awesome program, and I'm giving away food, I'm providing services, and I'm on the south side, but the most impoverished zip codes are on the east side of Savannah. So have I taken into consideration that a single mom with maybe 2 to 3 kids and no car, how is she going to reach my services? And if I say, oh, she can ride the bus, have you ridden the bus with 2 strollers or a carrier, or, have you walked those miles? And so when we actually have communities here in Savannah that are landlocked into low paying jobs because there's no transportation for them across our county, and they live in food and banking deserts. And so how do we create access for them, right? And create a ecosystem that provides additional access, and not just chalk it up to, oh, they could ride the bus, or or and not come into the realization that it's not so easy to ride a bus with 2 to 3 kids and diaper bags and carriers and strollers and all of those things. So maybe I consider, if I'm that program, that I have a couple days a week in a community service center or a local church or somewhere that's in that community that they have quicker access to, and maybe walk up access, right? So I've just created that bridging capital that was absent before. Even though the service was already available in the community, it wasn't accessible to the group who needed it the most. So I hope I explained that clearly.
Oh, you explained it clearly and great examples. I love that term ecosystem, that connection, and then that idea of bringing the services to where people are living, where the need is, and making sure I like that access, that connection to what they need most. So thank you so much for that example and that definition. Andraya, so you are a lawyer who has a practice in many different areas of law, and now you're an assistant public defender here in Chatham County. But at the same time, you're a community mediator, arbitrator. I want you to help us understand a bit more about how you navigate these roles. What are key differences and how you approach advocacy when wearing your lawyer hat and your mediator hat? And how do you bring those two roles together to help you advocate for families?
Good question. So when I am functioning in the capacity of an attorney, my job is to advocate for anything my client wants. Even if it's something ridiculous, it's still my job to advocate for my client's wishes. In the context of criminal defense, not only do I advocate for my client to be exonerated, right, to be found innocent, but it's also by painting the picture of who my client really is, okay? And that's kind of how I push forward that advocacy within the with a lawyer hat on. In terms of a mediator, it's completely different because I approach it from a position of objectivity. I approach it from a position of complete unbiasedness. And I am there to facilitate conversation amongst the parties in front of me in order to empower them to come to their own resolution. And so, what are different things that I can point to in their situation that can help bring them closer to forming an agreement that they themselves have crafted, rather than leaving the resolution up to a judge who's never seen you before, doesn't have the interest in the matter that you have, and doesn't have to live with the matter once it's over. So if I can encourage folks and facilitate agreements, it's not only for their own empowerment, but it's also a lot cheaper than hiring a lawyer. Lawyers can be quite expensive. So even just looking at, let's say, for example, if you were looking to get divorced, you could do it with a lawyer, or you could do it in a mediation arena. If you do it with a lawyer, right, or rather in that legal arena where it's adversarial. Okay, so you've got to keep that in mind. It's going to cost you probably between $7,500 and $20,000. If you take that same situation, remove the adversarial nature out, and we are introducing a very strong spirit of resolution and empowerment to come to your own agreement, that same scenario may only cost you $2,500. It may only cost you $500. It may only cost you $250. So particularly for folks that are disenfranchised financially, mediation is a great option. So hopefully I've explained that.
Yeah. Well, so you talk a bit about two things, like the cost savings, which is always important. But I think the thing that resonates with me most is that it's not adversarial, that you are positioning both parties to come up with a resolution that benefits them the most. And so I just wonder so in addition to cost benefits, what are other benefits for mediation to the parties and to the community?
Absolutely. One thing that I have found, people don't often have the opportunity, a safe space in which to speak, in which to be heard, in which to have their feelings or situation validated. Mm-hmm. Mediation provides that environment. It provides an opportunity for each party to be heard in a space where everything is confidential. You can get it off your chest, and once you get it off your chest, oftentimes you are ready to now let's kind of get down to the business of dealing with the issue at hand, particularly when you're talking about children, parents, other family matters, other money, things that are very close to you, things that you hold very dear. I encourage folks, you want to be able to come to an agreement about that on your own, because you are the one who's going to live with this day in and day out. So you are the one who knows all of the ins and outs to every aspect of the problem. The judge isn't going to know it. The judge isn't going to hear it. There are all types of rules of evidence and discovery that will keep out a lot of information that, although realistically it's relevant, legally it's not admissible. So if you really want the fullness and the breadth of not only participating in your own agreements and things that happen in your own life, mediation is just the place to be. And one of the things that Alicia said, the Neighborhood Leadership Academy, empowering folks to handle situations that come up in their own community. I'm also trying to take that more so into a judicial courtroom as well, into a judicial setting as well, in that I would also like to see certain misdemeanor situations mediated so that it doesn't have a criminal stigma. We're not continuing to just, lengthen somebody's criminal history and may avoid, or rather, would have a negative impact on their employment or entrepreneurial ventures in the future, etc. So there are so many aspects to mediation that are just positive and happy, and it just empowers our community.
Oh, no, thank you for that. I mean, it's a process that's very much aligned with like the principles of equity, the empowerment, as you spoke about, the opportunity to use your voice, to speak in the ways that matter, to speak about the things that are of value to you, to your family, to your community. And so, no, thank you so much for sharing and giving us some insight, especially as we compare it to like our judicial, our legal system, which does not operate often by those principles, and decisions made in those spaces really can change the course of many young people and older people's lives. So thank you for sharing. So now we move to our segment about why, right? We really on the show want to understand what brings you guys into this work and keeps you, as soldiers and warriors in the path toward equity. A few weeks ago, I had the opportunity to hear Alicia speak at the She Hustles panel in Savannah, Georgia. It's sponsored by the Creative Coast, and it's exactly what it sounds like. So this is an event where women are hustling as leaders and business owners, nonprofit executives, or they're aspiring to be all those things. And toward the end of the panel, the moderator, Dejan Jackson, posed the question to the panelists that I absolutely love. And you guys know I really love questions, right? I'm a researcher and now an interview host. And so I really love the questions that are being asked. I think that they give us insights into not only like the stories, but like the decisions behind those stories. And so the question that Dijon asked was, what is one question you wished people would ask you? And so Alicia mentioned she wanted people to ask her why. They always ask her how and what she's doing, which is a lot. And I know why they're asking you those questions. You have a wealth of knowledge to share with them. But she wanted them to ask why. And so I was like, oh my God, that's what we do here on the show, right? We really want to know what is the reason behind it. So Alicia, why have you committed so fiercely to advocating for women, families, and communities?
Well, one, because I came to the realization that I hope many people who are listening will come to, that no one's coming to save us, right? There is no white horse, there, no prince on a white horse. It's not, the government's not coming to bail us out. And certainly, I let people know that the system isn't broken. The system was built that way. It was an intentional disenfranchisement and marginalization of certain groups of people in our country. And when we look at what that means, and we can talk about that kind of at a really high level, which allows people to disassociate themselves from the everyday tyranny of the moment of what it feels like to live in poverty, right? It is a tyrannical, post-traumatic, stressful, trauma impacted situation. And so for me, I feel like someone has to show up, right? Someone has to show up. And that part of our ministry or part of our work and effort includes the ministry of hope, which has to be more than just a warm, fuzzy feeling. Hope has to be the confident expectation of a favorable outcome, no matter where you live in this community, no matter where you're born, what zip code you live in. You should be able to have a confident expectation that my child is going to have a favorable outcome, and that there will not be systematic barriers, structural barriers set up in opposition of my child making making a life and fulfilling their purpose and their dream. I happen to be a mother of an African American son who is brilliant and he's smart and he's funny and witty, and it doesn't matter today in America. My son can do all the right things, never have a criminal history. He could go to all the right schools. He could, and he's still going to be 70 years behind his counterpart in the wealth equity gap, right? Not because he's didn't have the right parents, not because he did something immoral or illegal or unethical, but simply because he was born Black. And that to me is problematic, right? It's problematic for me as a grandmother and a mother and an auntie that I have, these children in my family that I can't promise hope to unless I do the hard work of creating a leadership legacy that is willing to confront those systematic and structural barriers to their success. And so that's my why. And, and I think that more of us, right, should have a why that is not simply tied to our material success, but that creates a leadership legacy for those coming behind us.
Thank you. Yes, people should definitely ask you that question more often. Yes, I love the definition of hope. I love the leadership, the legacy, and really dismantling these structures and systems that have been in place. So like your children and our children can have the life that they deserve.
That they were promised.
Yes,
they were promised.
Yes. Yes. So thank you. Oh, I love it. Okay. So Andraya, in conversations, we have talked about how in some of your advocacy work that you are very much passionate about advocating on behalf of fathers and in support of their role as active parents. Why has this become your focus or your passion?
Oh my gosh, because right now we need our families intact. Right now we need to let our men parent their children. Okay? There are so many men, both Black and white, that are not able to actively parent, that have been relegated to you get to visit maybe once or twice a month, or just whenever I feel like you can visit, and it may be never because you're not satisfying my needs and making me happy in a way. And people weaponize their children, unfortunately. And we see now a lot of that being reflected just in terms of broken homes. There's so much trauma that by not allowing someone who wants to help, someone who has fathered these children to help, is an absolute travesty. And it very negatively affects our community. It negatively affects the children. It often will disenfranchise the entire paternal family. So it's not just the father who's being taken out of the picture. In many, many cases, it's the entire paternal family. And that's just wrong every kind of which way you cut it. And what I have found out is that most men honestly don't know their rights. They do not know they have the right to parent their child. And it's not just according to, whatever the child's mother or ex-wife may say. So I hope to bring families back together by doing that, and to create a stronger community by doing so.
Thank you. Before we are going to wrap up with a bit of inspiration, I do want to just recognize and highlight the work that you both are doing and how central family is to that, and how it's not a discussion of what a family looks like or what a family should be doing or how it should be behaving, right? Things that are part of the narratives when we talk about families, especially families in communities of color. But really it's how can we meet the needs of those families and position them so that they can thrive, so that they have the resources, the access, the influence to thrive. Because when families are put in a position to thrive, they have I believe it builds their capacity to do what families are here for, which is to love, right? And which is to connect and really be a part of a community, to have that togetherness. So I appreciate the work that you are both doing and the many ways that you are doing it. So as we close out the show, I want to give you guys each a chance just to share and impart some words of wisdom or inspiration on our audience. So I'll start with you, Alicia. You've shared the range of advocacy work that you have done in the past and that you do as the leader of Step Up Savannah. Just please tell us why it's important for us to understand and participate in various forms of advocacy.
Certainly. So I think when we talk about advocacy, people think about lawyers, picket signs, yelling, petitions, marches. And those are absolutely ways that you can advocate, right? Those include ways to advocate, but they aren't the only ways. And so we need to make sure that people understand that their vote is advocacy. Being registered to vote is advocacy. Gathering your family members and taking them to vote is advocacy. That's the strongest point of advocacy that you can have, because you are voting for the people who will create or remediate or dismantle policies and systems that have created these structural barriers. It can include social media campaigns. It can include petitions or letter writing. Don't relegate yourself to only one way to advocate, right? Is some advocacy required to be oppositional? Certainly. Certain people, certain groups benefit from having it this way. But I found most often, one of my PR mentors told me many, many moons ago, over 20 years ago, that you don't serve steak on a garbage pail lid because nobody's going to want to eat it. So part of advocacy, right, is starting out serving that up with facts, with truth, with data, with tools in your toolkit that don't leave much for the argument the other way. And so I think that if you want to broaden your advocacy efforts and engagement and empowerment, I think that part of it is the education process, right? And helping develop those other tools in your advocacy toolkit that you can take advocacy actions toward. Because again, we're not going to program our way out of this. Programs are the middle, the stopgap until we dismantle the policy or that's causing this. So part of it is understanding what the root cause is and then going after that. So I just want people to leave with that they are their most powerful advocates. And that part of the work of advocacy is making room for others, the traditionally voiceless, and passing them the mic. Let their reality speak, and to amplify and lift those issues up.
Yes. Thank you so much that was inspirational and uplifting. It's like, as you uplift people, you will definitely feel more uplifted in the work that you do. So thank you so much. And then Andraya, so you have worn many hats in your advocacy work throughout the years. What keeps you seeking new pathways for change or new pathways for justice?
Well, I will say being in the courtroom, seeing how folks are treated, seeing how other attorneys talk about folks that are their clients that look like me, seeing folks not get the legal representation that they deserve. My entire going to law school was based around being able to provide excellent legal representation without regard to one's ability to pay. That should not be a barrier. And what I see in the courtroom is very often atrocious and disturbing and upsetting. So for me, making sure that I represent each client to the best of my ability, that I show them in their best light, that I continue to be creative with my approaches and solutions, to not be afraid of the judges, of any political fallback, because there is that comes with it. Okay, but I ain't scared. Ain't never been scared. Ain't never will be. So that is definitely something that keeps me really, really focused, because we deserve respect. We deserve basic things that I just don't see us getting as often as we should. The other thing that really, really keeps me going is I want to empower folks. I want folks to know the courtroom is not your only way to get justice. So, by participating in mediation, by participating in community conferences, by participating in any leadership opportunity, you will, number one, gain more respect for yourself. You will learn how to set better boundaries. You will learn to more empathy, walking in somebody else's shoes. And it's just very important for your own self-empowerment. I want us to learn how to work out our issues in a way that is respectful and loving, and we can still get it done.
Yes.
You ain't gonna get that in the courtroom. Real talk. So.
Well, thank you guys so much for your real talk. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, your insights, your experiences, and your commitment to empowering families and communities. We are a better world with you guys. I love these things because I learned so much, and I know that everybody else has. So thank you guys. You're invited back anytime. I can remix you with another guest, and you guys can continue these important conversations. I will be back on March 25th with another interview show. The topic will be entrepreneurship, and we'll have Nita Penn, who is the director of the Women's Business Center here in the Savannah region, and Gloria Struthers, who is the business manager for Business Innovation Group at Georgia Southern University. So watch your feed, check your inbox so that you have details for how to tune into the next show. And anytime in between, you can check out our Remix EQ Live webpage. There's past episodes. There's more information about our guests and upcoming shows. And while you're there, please feel free to poke around and learn more about my business, Blue Knowledge, which advances equity in schools and communities. You can also follow us on LinkedIn. And of course, you can connect with me here in this space too. Thank you guys again for your participation. Thank you, audience, for your engagement, your comments, and your encouragement. I'm your host, Dr. Erica Tate, and this is Remix EQ Live. See you next time.
Bye.